Kia ora and welcome to the Niche Case Variety Show for this week, where we deliver a smorgasbord, a buffet of Kiwi sporting topics. We are here to broadcast Aotearoa's sporting excellence in all shapes and sizes. Big it up to our Patreons. You can support the Niche Case and all our Kiwi sports content on Patreon, patreon.com/our Niche Case, EL Niche Case. And once or twice a week, we do an extra podcast for our patrons as well. So if you are a patron, already a patron, check out the Patreon page because there's always extra content there. And if you want the karma boost of supporting the Niche Case, head on over to Patreon, where we also have extra content for you as well. Every Monday and Friday, we deliver a email hitter, just straight Niche Case content straight to your email. Every Monday and Friday afternoon. Sign up to that. Go to thenichecase.substack.com, whack in your email address, and you'll get all the Niche Case straight into your email every Monday and Friday afternoon. And of course, we're always writing about Kiwi sports at theniche-case.com. We always start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness, wobbly wildcard from the north of Aotearoa. Can you please serve us up some mindfulness?
That I can. We're going deep into the garden here with a fella called Mr. Thomas Moore, who wrote a book called The Reenchantment of Everyday Life. They don't normally give you the book that the quotes come from necessarily in these things, so that's a nice reference point. Mr. Thomas Moore says, the garden reconciles human art with... where are we? The garden reconciles human art with wild nature, hard work and deep pleasure, spiritual practice and material world. It is a magical place because it is not divided.
That one's a bit too deep for a Monday in lockdown. What do you
reckon?
make? How do you diverge your way through that?
He's just saying the opposites of human art and wild nature, of hard work and deep pleasure, spiritual practice and material world. Not necessarily opposites, but they can be opposing things, right? You know, hard work is meant to be... I mean, hard work can be pleasurable in itself. You know, if you feel like you've achieved something, it's rewarding. But I guess that's the point, is you work hard and then you see results, and you get that with your tending to your gardens or whatever. You get to dip into your season's lettuces that are suddenly ready to go on the sandwich. Human art and wild nature, you know, they're both are beautiful things, but one is human created, one is natural, already there, does it itself. Mother Earth created, and spiritual practice and material world are quite obviously opposing forces. It's hard to commit to one within the other, except apparently within the confines of your garden. It's what this fella says. It's a magical world because it is not divided, because it reconciles all those things, you know?
And much of that, can you just get out in the garden? Get out in the garden, figure it out, and you'll...
it's simple. It's not
all that beautiful mindfulness just from your own experience, mowing the lawns, tending to the weeds, growing your own crops as well.
Yep. Even just a pot plant, you know? He's keeping it alive and seeing it not die, which is easier said than done sometimes with those things, but it's all the same, you know. It does all those things.
Definitely can't agree anymore. We begin
there we go
with a bit of a hot take, bit of a it's coming out of the fridge though, because it's not too hot, not too cold, just right, as they say in the streets. And we just start off with one dramatic thing to say here, Wildcard. What have you got up your sleeve?
Up my sleeve, I'm just pointing out the fact that Sean Marks, NBA general manager for the Brooklyn Nets, still seems to be an underrated force in the NBA. I'm not sure what's going on. Not as much with... I think Nets fans are very appreciative of what he does. I think the wider NBA sort of scene, culture will say like he's done clearly excellent things. I just sort of feel like I'm not sure he gets the profile that necessarily others would get for doing as much as he has done. Part of that's because he likes to play it a little bit under the radar. He's not out there doing heaps of interviews. He's not working for he's not getting his name mentioned in trade rumors over and over and over, even when the when the James Harden trade happened. You know, a lot of it happened. It wasn't a complete surprise. We knew that Brooklyn were in the mix, but it was definitely something that felt like it happened very quickly, and it felt like it happened very silently. It wasn't the constant back and forth that you get from some of the other teams when they're involved in those kind of things. I'm not going to say he was robbed for the Executive of the Year award last year, because James Jones with the Phoenix Suns definitely had a fine case himself. But I will say that it was surprised to see Marks in a kind of distant third in those standings. There does seem to be maybe just an idea that the players kind of run the show in Brooklyn, and that like KD and Kyrie and now Harden as well are calling the shots. And there's probably some truth to that. Like the idea that those guys were the ones who pushed for Kenny Atkinson to be fired, that like they're deciding who's expendable, whatever, with roster decisions. And, you know, there's definitely a pandering to those guys for sure. But Sean Marks is still making things happen. He's the one out there pulling the strings. And like, even if Kevin Durant says like, we should sign this guy, Sean Marks is the guy who has to go out there and actually sign that guy, like to actually do the work, you know? So regardless of all that, I think, you know, I think he's perfectly happy to slide under the radar. I don't think that's a drama. And just want to chuck it out there that while this is still the case, I think he's secretly kind of, while no one's really been paying a heap of attention, I think he's secretly had another pretty fantastic offseason. You look at free agency deals for Patty Mills and Paul Millsap on like franchise-friendly money. I think Paul Millsap's in on like a veteran's minimum or something. And Patty Mills is like the perfect signing for that team. Like if you want a sixth man who can come and hit a bunch of three-pointers, be a leader on and off the court, just a fantastic like personality to have around, and a really clever dude. Like I can't say highly enough how much I think of that deal. I think it's perfect for that team. And obviously there's a little bit of San Antonio Spurs connection there as well between Sean Marks and Patty Mills. And Millsap as well. I think it'll be pretty handy for them in a smaller role. They've also added James Johnson for a bit of defense. They've re-signed Blake Griffin. They've brought LaMarcus Aldridge out of medical enforced retirement. He's got the all clear from doctors. He's back. And then they've managed to flip DeAndre Jordan as well, which, like, we're talking about player power. Like DeAndre Jordan was there because he was boys with KD and Kyrie. Like they brought him along. Kind of cost them Jared Allen, who was this like up and coming you know, potentially cornerstone big man who got flipped to Cleveland for a decent haul. And, you know, I think he's signed a very, very big contract with Cleveland now to move forward. But they kind of got stuck with, like, not stuck with, I'm sure DeAndre Jordan did some decent things, but Allen was a better player. Well, DeAndre's gone now. Like they've flipped him to Detroit. He's been released by Detroit and will end up probably on the Lakers for a vet's minimum. So they're kind of doing a nice thing by him, same as they did with Spencer Dinwiddie, where they probably would have traded him last year, but he was injured, so they couldn't. So what they've done instead was they like didn't have a choice but to let his free agency, well, his contract run down into free agency. But they managed to work a sign and trade with I think it was Washington that he's ended up on. So they've helped him get a nice handy deal, even though he was leaving. It's very similar to what they did with D'Angelo Russell. Like they gave him a big max contract as they signed and traded him to ensure he got more money that way than he would have otherwise. So helping out their free agents even as they're leaving their team. And so chuck in one more as well. He also managed to draft Cameron Thomas at 27th overall in the most recent draft. A fella who he's coming in at 27th. He's not one of the high flyers of that draft class, but he just happened to go on and earn joint Summer League MVP honors in last month or whenever that was. So last Nets season ended in overtime of Game 7 against the eventual champion Milwaukee Bucks. Like when you think about the fact they lost in the second round, it sounds a bit stink for a team with that kind of hype. When you think about the fact that they lost in overtime of the last game against the eventual winners, it suddenly doesn't seem like they were so far away from a title after all. That was with injuries that like Kyrie Irving, I don't think played in that series. James Harden was playing basically on one leg. He was a shadow of himself. And since then they've managed to get better. So once again, shout out to Sean Marks for just like pulling strings in the background and doing pretty insane NBA things.
And that just reinforces our double-pronged NBA love from our TRO. Steven Adams with the Memphis Grizzlies and Sean Marks running the Brooklyn Nets. So if you're a Kiwi basketball fan, you come for Sean Marks and then you loiter around the Brooklyn Nets for a bit of KD, bit of Kyrie, bit of James Harden, and good role players that Sean Marks is scouting himself. I do like it. My sizzling hot take here is that Finn Allen is the best slugger from Aotearoa right now. And he isn't in the World Cup squad for the T20 World Cup. So shout out to Finn Allen. I do believe he is the best six hitter, boundary hitter from Aotearoa. This is based on almost a year's evidence. He has a T20 international strike rate of 190. He's got a T20 strike rate of 171. And that T20 strike rate is based around absolute Super Smash domination last summer. Then he went over to England, dominated the T20 Blast, dominated the 100. And it all became settled in my mind that Finn Allen is Aotearoa's best slugger in Bangladesh. Not necessarily of the amazement of that Bangladesh series, but just because Finn Allen kept doing what he's always done, what he has done recently in Bangladesh. So he's been banging sixes, banging fours around the world, New Zealand, domestic cricket, England. He got an IPL gig. He won't be in the IPL second stanza, though. He had to withdraw from that. So that's a bit of a bummer. But he merely continued. Like, he didn't do anything amazing in Bangladesh, but he merely continued his slugging in Bangladesh in tough conditions. And for a bit of context here, Finn Allen had a strike rate of 161.9 from his 3 games in Bangladesh. No other batsman from either team scored over 10 runs with a strike rate over 130. And there Finn Allen was scoring 68 runs at a strike rate of 161. So I am fairly confident in saying that Finn Allen is the best slugger from Aotearoa right now. And that basically has him as one of the best T20 batsmen from Aotearoa right now. But he's not in that World Cup squad. So shout out to Finn Allen. And we will be following him closely in Pakistan as well. For people watching, it's all about a strike rate. That's all you got to worry with Finn Allen. He is a slugger. He's a pinch hitter, certified six hitter, all about the strike rate for Finn Allen. And that's what we will be tracking moving forward, just as I've been doing with Tim Seifert in the CPL. But it's a wee bit less funky with Seifert in the CBL, and he might be overtaken by Finn Allen. He already is. So no, don't worry about that. Speaking of statistics here, Wildcard, what is your vitamin statistic for this week's show?
Yeah, I'm tempted to carry on spontaneously from what you're saying and point out that games that Finn Allen didn't play were Black Caps lost handily in both of them. 0-2 in the 2 games before he turned up, 2-1 in the 3 games that he did play in Bangladesh. So there you go. But that's not actually what I have prepared. What I have prepared is some Flying Kiwis Champions League buzz, because it is over for another season. It doesn't take long sometimes with these things. And as far as the Champions League itself, there's still some Europa League out there. There's still some even a little bit of Conference League, potentially, the brand new one. There's no women's equivalent below the Champions League, unfortunately. But a 10-year streak of having the Kiwi woman in the Champions League ended last week as Vålerenga of Norway lost 6-3 on aggregate to FC Häcken of Sweden. CJ Bott was on the bench for both of those 2 legs. She did come on in the last 20 minutes of each of them, pretty much, and set up a lovely goal in the second leg. Damage was already done, but really nice work, like winning the ball just inside her own half and advancing it, pulling a 1-2 with one of her midfielders, putting in a delightful cross to the back post, which was volleyed in. Lovely work there, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to get Vålerenga into the 16-team, group stage. And that's kind of the problem here, is that they've revamped it. It used to start as a round of 32. Now they're having more games with fewer teams by having a group stage at the round of 16. So were this last season, in fact, they did get to the last 32 last season. That was how CJ Bott made it into the 10-year streak. But Alas, not the case this time around. Streak, which goes all the way back to 2011-12, is over. That was the season when a young Ria Percival played in the Champions League final for Frankfurt. Only male or female from New Zealand to ever play in the Champions League final. It's for a streak that has been propped up over that time by a New Zealand record 35 Champions League appearances by Ellie Riley, all for Rosengard in Sweden, where they were just making knockouts every single season, and had an awkward streak of getting stuck in the quarterfinals and not going further, unfortunately. But yeah, it's the streak is over now because neither CJ Bott could get through nor Liv Chance with Celtic, who fell in the round previously, the first round of qualifying. They didn't get through there either. So neither of the two women who were in contention this season got into the thing. Streak ends at 10 years. As for the fellas, it's been the opposite. When Ryan Thomas and PSV couldn't find the goal that they needed to beat Benfica against 10 men at home in the second leg a couple of weeks back, it extended a run of 14 years and counting since a Kiwi bloke last played in the UCL. Maybe next season, though, because PSV have actually been perfect through the first 4 games of Eredivisie stuff. So the league form is very good. And if they can't get through to the Champions League by the qualifying means, well, you got to maybe try the automatic route by just like winning your league, and might be a little bit easier, a little bit safer. So I was hoping that either that or maybe Sarpreet Singh might get a go at Bayern Munich at some point this season. I was hoping something along the lines might break that streak, but maybe next year. They're still contenders. Eventually someone's going to do it. Chris Killen was the last guy. It was 14 years ago. It was 2007. Last time a New Zealand man played in the Champions League, the 5th and final or 4th and final, I forget which. But yeah, we'll add one to the list soon enough. It's just not this year.
If you had like a fantasy pick of just one of your Flying Kiwis players to be in the Champions League, like right now, who would you go for?
Well, it would have just been Ryan Thomas getting through the qualifying round the other week, because they've been so good in all the other rounds to get up to the final playoff round. And then, yeah, Benfica just did the Portuguese football thing, just like had a cheeky lead after first leg, and they would just like sit back, relax, extremely well organized, and just like, you can't break us down, you're not gonna do it. So if I could have pulled some strings, I'm sure like no one, if Sarpreet Singh gets back to Bayern Munich, he's not going to need any help in playing Champions League games. It's just whether he can do that. But so far so good on his loan deal at the moment. Like Joe Bell potentially could one day end up at a club like that.
No, but just who do you want? Just like right now, just pick anyone. Just I want them in the Champions League, regardless of like how realistic it is.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Just scam anyone in there.
These fellas don't need my help to fix the future. So if I have that kind of ability, I want to fix the past and put Ryan Thomas in there this season. I'm impatient and I'm greedy, and I want that to happen.
I'm impatient and I'm greedy, and I want Sarpreet Singh in the fucking Champions League right now.
I know. I want that too. Libby Kakache is another one.
Oh.
One day. That's the thing. What these guys could get there anyway without me having to fiddle with the universal puppet strings.
Dicey. That is a dicey pastime, pulling on the universal puppet strings. My statistic is James Fisher-Harris and the Penrith Panthers. So prior to finals week 1, I noted that James Fisher-Harris had taken a bit of a dip in his Kiwi NRL production, which I thought was due to, I think, his wife partner gave birth, and he exited the bubble in Queensland to go be with his newborn child, I think, and then he returned to the bubble. He missed a few games, so I was like, okay, those last 2 games, he's just being eased back into Penrith Panthers footy and being eased into a pretty hectic finals run for the Panthers. That wasn't the case, though, because Fisher-Harris, instead of going back to what he was doing earlier in the season, where he was one of the best, if not the best, middle forward in the whole competition, he continued his lack of production. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Penrith Panthers lost and Fisher-Harris had a well below par performance. And the statistic to tell that story is, prior to round 24, James Fisher-Harris had just 2 games of less than 15 touches. In the 3 games since then, he has had 12 touches, 15 touches, and 12 touches against the Rabbitohs. So that's 3 consecutive games, less than 15 touches after just 2 games prior to round 24. And then prior to round 24, he ran for less than 100 meters in just 1 game. And that Rabbitohs game was the 3rd game in a row running below 100 meters. So basically, James Fisher-Harris set this bar, like he averages something like 161 meters per game, which is ridiculous, and all these great stats. He set that bar so high, and then he had a dip. 2 weeks where he had less than 15 touches and less than 100 meters, and I thought that was just, okay, whatever, ease him in. But that continued into the finals game against the Rabbitohs, where he had 12 touches and less than 100 meters. So not sure what's doing there with Fisher-Harris. One of our favorite Kiwi NRL players here at the Niche Cage. And that's probably why the Panthers fell off to the Rabbitohs. And, it's hard to say whether like Wayne Bennett did a Craig Bellamy type coaching job in terms of Craig Bellamy shutting down Tom Trbojevic. I don't think Fisher-Harris was the focal point of Wayne Bennett's strategy in that game, but it could have been. Otherwise, Fisher-Harris is just out of form, but he will be crucial for the Panthers coming up this weekend as they face a knockout game. So keep an eye on Fisher-Harris this weekend in the NRL. Couple of lower output games and a big old loss to the Rabbitohs on the weekend. So he needs to step up, and hopefully that will, well, who cares about the Panthers? Just hopefully Fisher-Harris steps up and gets back to legitimate, like, top 3 forward statistics and output and production. What have you got deep in the mangroves there, Wildcard?
Right, well, deep in the mangroves, don't know if you heard, but on Friday afternoon, I believe it was, there was an announcement from the Wellington Phoenix, also from New Zealand Football, that they were, that the W League Phoenix team is officially happening, and it's happening this season. Lovely stuff. Don't need me to explain right now why that's such an important thing. Well, finally, we've got the triumvirate of the He-Nicks, the She-Nicks, and the We-Nicks are all going to be playing this season, and means also the Phoenix will be in contention for the first ever. I think they're doing in order to try and like conjoin the two clubs, the Aussie leagues are they're going to give a trophy to the team that gets the most, like, I don't know what it is, like combined points, I think, between if you add your men's team and your women's team together, who's got the most points. So the Phoenix will be able to compete for that in the first ever time that's going to be dealt with. Coaches TBD at the time of recording. Sounds like probably Gemma Evans from the Football Ferns development program will be there. As to the squad, they're looking at an 11-player squad. That's the target, which would mean 11 Kiwis most likely and 7 Australians, because that was what those are the conditions they've been left with. They have to have 7 Australians in their team, which I think is harsher than it needed to be. I mean, harsh, it's not like a punishment. There's plenty of good Australian players that will help the team win games, and that's all for the benefit, but I'm surprised that number was as high as it was. Never mind. I did laugh at a note in one of the Aussie write-ups that was kind of hinting that the restrictions were there to avoid the team becoming like an NZ light squad, which is kind of crazy because all the best Kiwi players are most of them are playing overseas professionally and have been for a long time. Like, it's a bit of a crazy intermission there, but like looking at the squad, the only ones who are currently out of contract, who aren't on a pro deal or at a college in America right now from the Olympians, from the ones that got minutes at the Olympics, are Erin Naylor, Anna Green, and Annalie Longo. Annalie Longo was a big part of the announcement, so it sounds like there's a likelihood there, although she's just got a new role as a technical, I think women's technical development officer or something like that with NZ Football, so maybe she's started wanting to focus a bit more on the off-field thing. I don't know whether she'll be a part of that squad or not. She seemed non-committal, so see how that goes. There were also from that Olympic squad, Marissa Vandermeer and Mickey Robertson, who didn't play, who were part of the initial sort of 4 traveling reserves. I think you're probably going to get short odds on. Well, I think Mickey Robertson will be one of the first on the team sheet, on the squad list there, because she is someone who actually has been training with the Phoenix as one of a couple of women's players. I think Macy Fraser might be another one who's done some time working with them. Anna Green has as well. Oh no, Macy Fraser might have been working at Ole, actually, come to think of it. So there's a few options there of players, like some of the topper tier players who might end up in that squad. I'll also chuck out that Betsy Hassett season just finished in Iceland. So there's a chance that I think she's probably off contract. There's a chance that she might come back. I wouldn't necessarily bet on any of that, though. I think, like, from my point of view, what I would want to see in the squad is a lot more of boosting players up from outside the professional ranks rather than bringing current professionals back and just like having fewer players overseas because they're just playing for Phoenix now instead. I'd rather see players boosted up from outside of that. And because of the contract situations of most of them, I believe that's what we'll largely see, with a couple of star players, of course, to help win some games. So those 11 players, I think, probably going to mostly be local players. I think the FFDP program will be a big part of that. I think you'll see especially if the coach is taken charge, I think you see quite a few players coming from that group, which would make sense. That is a group of players identified as being like, the best players domestically from outside of current professional ranks. Not as many, like, there's a couple of the Cantabrians sometimes don't join that team though. So I'm guessing because it's a bit of a travel out from Canterbury to move to Auckland. So hopefully Wellington in between the two might bring a few of those Canterbury Pride players involved as well. Maybe there will even be a couple of like college returnees. I don't know, but safe to say it's pretty easy to make a decent squad if you're like looking at the likes of, some of the domestic players who could be available. Georgia Candy, Nicole Stratford, I mentioned Vandermeer, Michaela Hunt would be someone high on the list, Rebecca Lake, Saskia Vosper, Malia Steinmetz hasn't re-signed with Perth yet. Katie Duncan might even, she was in she was in the last FFDP, so she might even be, a veteran presence. Charlotte Wilford Carroll and Macy Fraser would both be immediately on my list if I were picking them. Grace Wisniewski, Aniela Jensen. I'm just looking at players from the mock squad I drew up a couple months ago and those who are still available. And then, the other thing is because of the timing of the seasons, we have the W League will sort of operate in the off season of the Americans. It's not impossible. I don't think you get Abby Erceg or Ali Riley down here, but Rosie White's been sick for most of the season. Hasn't been able to play. If she wants to get out on loan for some minutes, this is an option there as well. Might even some of the Scandinavian leagues might even have similar things. So just a bit of an indication there deep in the groves as to what we might be looking at in terms of an actual squad now that the team is a reality. And I think there's plenty of talent to go around. There's going to be, for what is 11 spots for New Zealand players on that roster, I think it's going to be quite fiercely competitive to get those. It'd be a bit like trying to get the golden tickets to Willy Wonka Land or whatever,
Kind of similar.
Kind of,
yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
I spent much of that thinking about like what would you call like the junior woman Knicks.
I would just count them both as wee Knicks. Or
no, but you've got the. So you're applying the wee Knicks to the
wider academy rather than the team.
Yeah, that works.
But you could get more specific within that if you wanted.
I'm going deep into the New Zealand Warriors mangroves because they have some footy to play with the Redcliffe Dolphins, the Redcliffe Aihi. They have finals footy this weekend. So the under-21s, they finished third and they're playing the second place Townsville Blackhawks. Intra Super Cup is reserve grade. They finished fifth and they are playing against Sunshine Coast Falcons, who finished eighth. So their under-21s game will be like a qualifier, and then fifth versus eighth in reserve grade is an elimination. New Zealand Warriors players who played for the Dolphins this weekend, just gone, in under-21s you had Eric Va'afutsuanga and Dayon Amatuanai, Kinakepu and Daniela Otakulo. Regular cast there, hold on. William Whakatomafe usually plays under-21s, but he didn't play that game, so it'll be interesting to see if he lines up in the elimination or the qualifier final. And reserve grade, you had Viliami Vailea, Edward Kossi, Jackson Frey, Pride Pedersen Robati, Tom Ale, Preston Ricky, and PC Kepu. So I don't know how it works, but like the Kepu brothers are twins, and one of them was playing reserve grade, the other was playing under 21s. So I don't know how they decide like who's better, or like who's better suited to whatever grade, but they are climbing up the ranks very quickly of the Warriors. But I'm talking around one of the strangest sports stories I can remember, where Taniela Otukulo played 3 NRL games this year, and he went back to play under 21s for Redcliffe. Hold on. This was apparently his 6th game for under 21s, and he has not played a game for reserve grade. So Taniela Otukulo, I thought, was like pretty good for a young hooker in the NRL. He's a dynamic runner, but he didn't get too many opportunities in the NRL to really show that. But he got about his defensive work pretty well. But he's missed the whole stage of development. He hasn't played reserve grade. He's only played under 21s and NRL. And he made his NRL debut having played a few games for the under 21 team. And then after his NRL stint, he goes back down to under 21s, which is, none of this is bad or negative. It's just really strange and really weird. It's not bad or negative because Otukulo is not the norm. This isn't the status quo of like the Warriors jerking players up from under 21s to play NRL. That's definitely not happening. The Warriors are doing more of this is a Melbourne Storm long-term strategy that has been a fundamental part of their success, is giving players like a complete season of reserve grade, giving them 2 seasons of reserve grade before they move into the NRL squad. And Otukulo did not do that for the Warriors, but I think like guys like Rocco Berry, Edward Kossi, Jackson Frey, the Kepu twins have been in and out of reserve grade. Preston Ricky has played a whole season of reserve grade this year for Redcliffe. Tom Ale has been in constant present for reserve grade as well. Viliami Vailea seems a bit more talented, so he went from first 15 straight to reserve grade and then to NRL for a few games. But generally speaking, the Warriors are just keeping players in reserve grade for a while and then calling them up when they're needed, as instead of like fast tracking. Like you go back in the Warriors history and players were going from under 20s straight to the NRL fairly frequently. But it's just strange for Otukulo, like no reserve grade games, 6 under 21 games, 3 NRL games in the 1 year. Maybe that is you can't say it's a sign of how good Otukulo is, because if he was that good, he'd be playing reserve grade every week. So it's strange, but maybe it's just the sign of the times with the Warriors and Redcliffe Dolphins. And just to go deeper into the Mangroves, stay tuned with a lot of the stuff for the Warriors, because they signed on to play at Redcliffe next season, continue that partnership, but we're still waiting word on Redcliffe's expansion bid, which won't impact next year. But Redcliffe Dolphins definitely want to be in the NRL, and the Warriors have continued or extended their connection to the Redcliffe Dolphins. So it's all a bit messy, but it seems to be working fine. Like the Redcliffe Dolphins have Warriors players in their under 21s team, in their reserve grade team most weeks. They had players in their under 18 team as well, I think earlier this year, under 19s maybe it was. So that partnership seems to be working out really well. And the Warriors players who have been playing for Redcliffe will now be playing finals footy for Redcliffe this weekend and hopefully beyond, because it might be a positive finish for the Warriors season as well. So be keeping a close eye on that. And shout out to Taniela Otukulo for just whatever the fuck he's doing, not playing reserve grade. Like we talk about avant-garde cricketers wildcard. Otukulo's an avant-garde rugby league player. He just said, fuck reserve grade. Don't need none of that. Get me up and down between under 21s and the NRL. I've got a question for you, Wildcard. I want you to... This is started out as I just wanted your opinion on the best footballer in the world, but that gets a bit easy. You're going to just fall back on like Ronaldo, Messi type of stuff. I want a bit more detail on what you've seen from Ronaldo at Manchester United. You told me he scored a double, returning to Man United. You are a Man United fan. How, like, just what you can, if you think Ronaldo is the best player in the world, you can use this as an example or a reason or an explanation. But I'm just curious, what do you make of Ronaldo returning for Manchester United?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer this is to sort of answer it in a way that answers both the original question and then the evolved question, because I think it's like I've learned a lesson from this as terms of what it is like that. Because okay, I'll put it this way: like, it was when Ronaldo first signed for United, it was a big dramatic transfer. There was talk that he'd go to Manchester City, and Juventus were trying to rejig things, and they didn't necessarily want him, but also at the same time, like, he quite wanted to leave. There'd been a couple disappointing Champions Leagues in a row. And he signed for United with a lot of fanfare. And then ever since then, it's just been constant. Ronaldo's back. Like, the marketing team's just gone nuts on all that kind of thing. And really, like, hyped it up to the absolute extreme, which I guess you've got to do. I don't know. But definitely, and I guess definitely you've got to do that in light of what I'm going to say in a sec. But like, I had reservations as a United fan over what that does to add someone who's like, still one of the very best players in the world, but someone who's like the latter stages of their career. Are they, is he gonna shake things up in quite a young team in a way that suits him, maybe at the expense of the rest of the thing? Would they have to change the way they're playing? Would it be too much to, like, he's not someone who's going to press much off the ball or any of that kind of thing? To the point where I even had like other United fans saying like, why are you being a downer about this? And I'm like, it's not being a downer. It's just being realistic. But like, watching, like, getting past the stuff that was manufactured hype, like the club tweeting 1,000 times a day about Ronaldo or whatever, and then the stuff about his squad number and whatever, getting into the actual, like, the day's experience of seeing, like, following on Twitter, not from club media sources who obviously have an agenda, but from fans out there just like traveling to the game and sights of the crowd and just what a buzz it was and everything. And it sort of made me realize that, like, when you talk about the best players in the world, there's more that goes into it than just like ability on a football field. Like, because then when you get into that, it's very difficult to compare like a center back to a striker or whatever. You can make cases for many players on those kind of lines. Just like you look at the previous generation, and it was always like, I think like the Xavi and Iniesta type players maybe got slept on for a while until the very end of their career, when you realize, looking back, just how good they were, how much they won, and how important they were to that Barcelona team at its peak. Even though Lionel Messi was scoring 50 goals a season for them, and he was clearly like the top dude on the planet, but you can make cases that others are more influential, whatever, but no one had the presence of a Messi or a Ronaldo during that era to compete with them. And I think these days there's probably only, so there's three other players who can compete in terms of that level of celebrity. It goes beyond just being a footballer, like that level of celebrity. I think Erling Haaland is right on that trajectory just because of his incomparable like goal scoring, and just the way his next transfer had been like dealt with and poised, and all the clubs were sort of bidding for him, and the way his career has been managed. And he's on that list. Neymar is obviously on that list as well, for just sheer whatever you want to call it, Neymarness. I think Kylian Mbappe is certainly on that list as well. Mbappe's had a couple of downer moments in the last few months for sure. Missing a penalty in the Euros was definitely right up there as well. But like, those are probably the five guys. You can make arguments either way, because it's no longer just Messi and Ronaldo, because they're a bit older and whatever. But I think it's not just like, there are other players who are arguably as important for their teams as what they do as those guys are for their teams. And three of them play at the same team now, so that's a complicating factor as well. But it's like just watching the hype and the buzz around Ronaldo's return to Old Trafford and everything. And I think when we talk about best players in the world, I think that's a factor. Like, you can say it's hype, but I think the hype matters. I think it takes a certain type of player, certain type of personalities to build that level of hype. And that's that's a major factor in terms of what goes into being one of the best players. And that has an effect on the field too. It's not just empty stuff. It's like you watch, it's different when a guy goes up against Ronaldo versus when he goes up against Chris Wood. You know, against Chris Wood, you know what you're going to get. It's very difficult. He's gonna be like physical and do all those rough stuff. But like, you're in for the battle. Like a Virgil van Dijk is not, or Virgil van Dijk's about the best defender in the world, so he's not a good example. He can foot it with anyone. But an average, like a Brighton centre back or something might be outmatched coming up against Chris Wood. I don't know. Like, but at the same time, they're never going to be in awe of Chris Wood to where they're not up for that battle. And against Ronaldo, there is an aura and there is a sort of level of, man, that's Cristiano Ronaldo going on. And that has an effect on the way that players play against them as well, I think. So just all of that stuff, I think, goes into. I don't know about how to pick like one player among that thing, but I think there's a lesson that I've learned to realize that sort of the hype that comes with being one of the world's best players is not just an empty hype. It's like it's a real thing, and it's a big factor in terms of, obviously, in terms of marketing and money making and all this kind of thing. But it's a factor on the field as well. It's a factor off the field. It's just it's a major part of what makes these players the best in the world is that they do have that level of like star power to them. So I've learned that lesson in the last few days.
Someone say Ronaldo's got a bit of mana.
He could. There's at least one incident in his past which is the opposite of that. So
yeah, footballing mana, like you're saying.
But footballing mana for sure.
He carries a certain energy with him as well.
Yeah.
I did when you were saying like, oh my God, I'm coming, like you're saying about the defender coming up against Cristiano Ronaldo. I was close when you said Chris Wood, but it's
Cristiano Wood.
It gets a bit close there, and I was like, oh, that's solid comparison. But I was like hoping you'd say Chris Wood when you're like Cristiano Ronaldo instead of Cristiano Wood, which is Chris Wood, because Chris Wood is probably short for Cristiano Wood, as opposed to Christopher Wood.
I believe his birth certificate says Christopher, but I think spiritually he's Cristiano Wood. Yeah, on a deeper level, that's his. That you know how like when okay, so I'll just use Ram Dass as an example, right? Like Ram Dass is not his name. You know, he was Richard Alpert, something like that. He was, you know, that's his Western society name, whatever you call it. But when he became a more enlightened being and committed to a path of like deep spirituality type things, he changed his name. He had like a spiritual name as well that he evolved into. That's Cristiano Wood, you know. It's Cristiano Wood, same as it's Bellinho.
And Liberto.
Yes, Liberto Carlos Cacace.
Roger.
Chucking a question back at you now. This will be a less philosophical one, I think. It's just like I can see why they wanted to name the squads earlier for all those, you know, when they got 3 Black Cap squads at once back a wee while back. I can see why that was the case. Like it's very difficult to sort international travel. It's just easier to do it all at one time. But it did mean that you had to announce a World T20 squad before seeing like the competing guys from the second 11 play in Bangladesh. So in you know, hindsight being what it is, but as we are right now, my question is, do you agree with myself that Finn Allen and Ajaz Patel should absolutely 100% be in the World T20 squad were it picked right now? Is that the case for you as well as it is for me?
Finn Allen, yes, but I also would have said that before the Bangladesh series.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's been compounding, it's been building for Finn Allen, and it's clear that the Black Caps T20 selectors don't watch a whole lot of T20 tournament cricket. They're more worried about what these players do for New Zealand and in New Zealand as well. So I would definitely have Finn Allen in my World Cup squad as just like an absolute slugger, because he is the best slugger from Aotearoa. Ajaz Patel's a harder case, and I'd agree right now you'd want Ajaz Patel in.
Condition specific, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's same conditions as Bangladesh, so it definitely holds weight. I'm just I don't know if Ajaz Patel can bat as good as Todd Estelle though, Wildcat. I don't know. Like,
I don't know if it matters.
Fielder. I don't know if he's. I don't know if he's as good as making coffees as Todd Estelle. I don't know if he's good as like collecting the cones as Todd Estelle. But it's just, Ajaz Patel was maybe Ajaz Patel just doesn't give a fuck, and Todd Estelle really gives a fuck about those things. So that's why he got selected. But that's what you're basically dealing with. You're dealing with Ajaz Patel versus Todd Estelle for that backup spin role. Both have played limited amounts of T20 cricket, even though Todd Estelle is just a white ball cricketer. He's not exactly, I think he's played like 4 or 5 T20 internationals. So he's not an experienced T20 campaigner. Right now, I would have Ajaz Patel in that squad, but who's to say that if Todd Estelle was in Bangladesh, he would have done the same thing? He just didn't get that opportunity because he's already in the World Cup squad. So
sure, yeah,
that gets into the timeline complications of how these squads were announced, because you could have had a battle between Ajaz Patel and Todd Estelle in Bangladesh. That would have been the move. That's what you would have done, like a shootout.
Godzilla versus King Kong.
And maybe a bit of Rachin Ravindra in there as well, because he's probably a better batsman than Todd Estelle and a better spinner than Todd Estelle. He's a better batsman than Ajaz Patel. It's very complicated, very messy. Finn Allen should have always been there. I can't say 100% Ajaz Patel. He just doesn't have like the T20 mana, so to speak, once again, based on like years of, because Super Smash record isn't fantastic. Todd Estelle has at least been in the mix for that T20 team. So Finn Allen definitely, Ajaz Patel maybe, but the move I would have made is had them go to battle in Bangladesh and then whoever's better, just give them the job.
Last man standing.
Like, I mean, you're fucking picking the third best spinner, It's not like we're trying to pick you guys go to battle to see who can open the bowling in a World Cup. No. So you guys go to battle to see who can be the backup spinner for the World Cup. That's all we're doing here.
Yeah. Because remember, we have 2 world-class 2020 spinners who play every single game. So, yes.
So it's like, again, maybe Ajaz Patel doesn't want to fuck around with all the backup shit.
Yeah,
he's there to be the main dog. He's there to lead all wicket takers in Bangladesh. He's there to dominate. He's already the best test spinner. He doesn't need that, backup shit. Whereas maybe Todd Estelle, he's a team man. He's all about the backup shit. Let's move on. Finish with some musical jams here, Wildcard. Shout out to Imperial G's. But they had a new song, We Ain't the Same, which is an absolute slammer. But they are from, if you go to Vill's Visions with Z's, VILLZ, Visions with a Z at the end, on YouTube. If you just search Imperial G's, IMPERIL with the capital G, We Ain't the Same. If you search either of those, you'll come across Vill's Visions YouTube channel, and he is, by all accounts, sharing music videos from a group of artists who are from Otahu. They make pretty hard out hip hop, a little bit of gangster, quite a lot of gangster, but it's not exactly like the new wave drill gangster music. It's definitely Otahu gangster music with a bit of enlightened wisdom in there as well. Like there's another song, The Dirty South from MSG. There's LASIK. There's Fro. Shout out to Fro. Shout out to LASIK. Shout out to MSG. Shout out to Imperial G's as well. Whatever they're doing, they're making just some good quality hip hop. Bit of gangster, bit of wisdom, bit of OG, Nouse, that kind of stuff. I like it. We Ain't the Same is an absolute slammer. Getting a couple of YouTube views as well. So shout out to them. Shout out to Otahu, or as these guys refer to it, Ota Blue. And there's also a new song, Holly Smith, the Aotearoa songstress, and Razor Bizza. They got a new song as well. So search that up. Holly Smith and Razor Bizza. Shout out to them. What's your musical selection this week, Wildcat?
Yeah, chuck on a little bit of A little bit of Novellas Aphantasia, a new album if you're looking for them sort of ambient guitar tunes. Chuck on a bit of Casey Musgraves has got a new one, Star-Crossed, which is her divorce album, sort of country crossover. Casey Musgraves has been like, she's made flawless albums up until this point. I do prefer the sort of earlier the more straighter country type stuff that she was doing, where she was like duetting with my man Willie Nelson and stuff. But her last album was a big breakout. This is a follow-up to that in the same mold, like sort of pop influences and stuff, and trying to do this sort of like conceptual Romeo and Juliet type thing. That's called Star-Crossed. It's pretty good. And then Meat Bodies, album called 333. Which is half of 666, I assume. I don't know. But Meat Bodies is one of them, like one of the Californian garage rock type staples of the last few years. They are, good mates with Ty Segall and John Dwyer and all those types of dudes. Meat Bodies have always been one of my favorite of that scene because it's just crunchy, fuzzy guitars. It's awesome. And their new one is short and sharp. It's only about 7 songs, only about half an hour long, but and a little bit experimental in a couple of places as well. They're sort of mixing up the sound a little bit. And I think it's very good. It's what I want, and it's a little bit more experimental and creatively like pushing the boundaries for themselves as a band at the same time. So that's awesome. Meat Bodies they've done, this also their third album, I suppose, is part of why the title is 333. But yeah, serving up the goods once more. And that's what I've got on my musical jams.
Good things come in threes, so you want 3 of them.
There you go.
All right.
I had 3 albums just mentioned there too. There you go.
Variety show. We'll be back later in the week for another episode of the Niche Cast, and where we'll just have a bit of a kōrero. Kiwi Sports kōrero. That's what we're here for. Kia kaha. Big it up to yourself. Stay beautiful. Cheer, cheer.